You're listening to the Angry Marks Podcast Network.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening. My name is Arya Whitmer, and this is your NXT Takeover Brooklyn Part 3 post-show audio recap exclusively on AngryMarks.com. It is Saturday, August 19, 2017. Thank you for listening. This was an interesting show, and for a change, a lot of these takeover shows, they're kind of the end of all storylines. You got to wait for a week or two to see where they're going next. And I guess in a way, it was the end of a couple storylines here, but you don't have to wait a week or two to see what's happening next. We know the main story heading forward, but let's not jump the gun, shall we? Let's start from the beginning. The show began with a band called Code Orange playing the theme song to NXT TakeOver Brooklyn with NXT clips interspersed throughout. They've actually performed twice on the show, once here and once doing Aleister Black's entrance. I'll tell you, for my own taste, I thought the Aleister Black, their performance for Aleister Black, I thought was better. Show started in ring with Johnny Gargano versus Andrade Cien Almas. These two worked pretty well together, and it made for an excellent opener. In all honesty, you could have listed any of four matches as the best match of the night, and you wouldn't be wrong with any of them, and this is definitely one of them. Almas got the heat by locking Gargano in an armbar in the ropes and worked the shoulder. Gargano came back with a series of clotheslines and a slingshot spear from between the ropes. Almas did that spot where he lounges in the ropes, but Gargano hit a super kick, dropping Almas to the outside. Almas caught him on a second spear and hit a tornado scorpion death drop. Gargano kicked out of that. Gargano blocked a superplex, but Almas flipped over on a sunset flip powerbomb, and he landed on his feet, hip-tossing Gargano into the corner. After a series of reversals, Gargano got on the Gargano escape, which is his head and arm submission hold, but Almas rolled through and hit a deadlift powerbomb into the turnbuckles. Almas took off from the opposite corner, hit his running double knees for the nearest of near falls. Finally, Gargano hit two super kicks. He lawn darted Almas into the corner and went for a running kick to finish things when Zelina Vega threw a Tommaso Ciampa t-shirt at Johnny Gargano, which distracted Gargano. Almas hit the Hammerlock DDT and picked up the win. And a really good match, but unfortunately it was overshadowed by a lot of other things happening on the show. They showed Kurt Angle and Daniel Bryan sitting in a skybox, and talking to Kurt Angle was Roderick Strong and No Way Jose. Meanwhile, talking to Daniel Bryan, in fact, hanging all over Daniel Bryan is a more accurate description, were the iconic duo, Peyton Royce and Billy Kay, were all over Bryan, who was just laughing at the preposterosity of the situation. Corey Graves randomly joined the announce table for the next match, which saw the reigning, defending, undefeated, undisputed NXT Tag Team Champions, the Authors of Pain, defending against Sanity. This, another excellent match. Completely different from the opener, but still an excellent match in its own right. Akam and Razor stormed the ring for a four-way brawl with Alexander Wolf and Killian Dane before the match even began. They brawled to the outside, and Eric Young pulled out a table and set it up against the barricades, but it didn't come into play until later as this brawl broke down into a tag team match. Sanity teased that it'd be Wolf and Killian Dane as they were the two brawling with AOP early. Alexander Wolf started the match when it officially began, and Dane stood on the apron. However, just as Wolf went for the tag, Eric Young jumped on the apron, And since Killian Dane was never an official member of the match, they were able to do a switch, and Eric Young was the other legal man. So it was Alexander Wolf and Eric Young as the tag team in the match. AOP took over here. There was no real baby faces of the group, but the fans were really into Eric Young throughout the entire match, and they were pretty much the baby faces by default, even though they had what basically was a 4-on-2 advantage on the Authors of Pain. AOP used an impressive move where Akam backdropped Young onto Razor's shoulders, who dropped Eric Young with a Dominator. The crowd at first wasn't really caring for anybody else's insanity. They were just really into Eric Young. But the hard work of everyone involved got the crowd super into this match. Authors of Pain, they don't get a lot of credit as some other people do, but they've improved exponentially since debuting. And in all honesty, this, I think, was Alexander Wolf's first real chance, first real opportunity to show what he can do. And he was really good as well. And of course, I think we all know Eric Young is pretty damn good himself. So this was, a quality tag team match, a really good match. It wasn't like DIY versus the AOP or when the Revival were in. This was really good, like I said, in a completely different way. Akam went for this. Okay, this was the only thing I had to question the entire match. Razor had Eric Young up and was going to go for a superplex, but Eric Young was trying to block it. So Akam came over, and his bright idea was to powerbomb Razor, and while he did that, Razor would superplex Eric Young. So no matter what happened, he was going to be powerbombing his partner. Well, unfortunately, and this is where it gets hilarious here, Nikki Cross, who, I don't know how much she weighs. I'm not even going to guess. However, it's safe to assume she weighs probably a third of, maybe not even a third of what Akam and Razor weigh each. And so Nikki Cross is holding Eric Young's feet, and the combined power of Akam and Razor cannot overcome this. And Akam ended up just powerbombing Razor, which would have happened either way, but he didn't get the satisfaction of also superplexing Eric Young. Akam got pulled to the outside. Eric Young hit a diving top rope elbow, but Akam was able to dive back in at the last possible second. Paul Ellering got sick of Nikki Cross's shenanigans, so they got in the ring together. They did not touch, but as the referee tried to get Paul Ellering out of the ring, Nikki Cross came off the top rope with a dive onto Akam. However, Akam caught her and was about to slam her down, but Killian Dane appeared out of nowhere, spearing both of them through the table that was set up earlier in the match. Razor was left with Wolf and Young, and not even Razor could overcome what's amounted at this point to a 4-on-1 advantage, as the 14-month undefeated streak of the Authors of Pain is over. Sanity is your new NXT Tag Team Champions. They hit the double team neckbreaker on Razor, and Alexander Wolf and Eric Young are your new champions. The Kings are dead. Long live the new Kings of the Tag Team division. But that's not completely it. As the new champions celebrated, out through the crowd ran former ROH Tag Team Champions Bobby Fish and Kyle O'Reilly, and they assaulted everyone. They were not called Red Dragon, but Morrow referenced their successes in ROH and New Japan. After laying out the other four men, they dropped Young with Chasing the Dragon, which was called by name. Young and O'Reilly dropped the tag team belts on Young and left through the crowd. And so, yes, ladies and gentlemen, we have a new tag team. And I guess, I don't know if, Fish and O'Reilly are not baby faces, at least I'm pretty sure they're not baby faces. So we've got 3 heel tag teams on the top of the NXT tag team division. Neville was moodily sitting in the crowd by himself. On the other side of the ring, Shinsuke Nakamura and Kalisto were sitting together. Jim Ross then came out as the surprise guest commentator for the next match. It's good to see that he has not been retired since Cesaro and Sheamus had that confrontation with Dean Ambrose and Seth Rollins at the WWE 2K event yesterday. And we get Aleister Black versus Hideo Itami. You know what you were in for when the match began with both men kicking each other in the face multiple times. This was the weakest match of the show, but it was not a bad match at all. In fact, it was better than a lot of the matches you've seen on WWE pay-per-view in the last 6 months. It's just on this show, on this night, it was the 5th best match. Let's see here. Tommy hit his first big move of the match as he dropped Black on the top rope and used a jumping knee to the head. He may have caught him in the nose since Black sprung a leak and was wearing the crimson mustache. Tommy face-washed a down Black and mocked him by sitting cross-legged on the mat. Black started his comeback and hit the Quebrada, but actually wasn't so much of a Quebrada and as much of a backflip kick to the head. More of a springboard Pele kick than anything else, I guess. Tommy took him back down with a diving clothesline and a fisherman suplex. Tommy actually hit a Falcon Arrow from the middle rope, but Black kicked out and stared down at Tommy, and we got the flurry. These two men, for what had to be a good 30 seconds, possibly more, hit each other with a flurry of strikes. They hit each other with everything you could possibly give another human being while standing almost completely still. Kicks, punches, chops, slaps, knees. It was insane. After that, Tommy went for the go to sleep, but Black blocked it. Tommy screamed that everyone needs to show him respect. So Black hit him with a black mass, took his head off, and picked up the win. Sasha Banks, Becky Lynch, and Bayley were shown sitting at ringside for the next match. And folks, we've seen one streak end tonight. Is it time for another streak to end? It is the reigning, defending, undefeated, undisputed NXT Women's Champion of the World, Asuka, going one-on-one with her biggest rival, Ember Moon. The match got off to a quick start with Ember attacking at the bell. Asuka rolled to the outside, but Ember used a flip dive off the middle rope onto Asuka. The champ took over by sending Ember first into the ring steps and then suplexed her onto the ramp. Back into the ring, Asuka focused her offense on Ember's shoulder that got injured several months ago, locking in a Fujiwara armbar. Ember got out of it and hit a step-up enziguri for a 2 count. Asuka went for the Asuka lock, but Ember reversed it into one of her own. But Asuka reversed that and locked it on good. Ember tried to flip over to do a takeoff of the Bret Hart-Roddy Piper finish from WrestleMania 8 and almost had the pin there, but Asuka kicked out. Ember kicked out of a running hip attack and blocked the second one before hitting a tornado suplex. Asuka booted Ember right in the face, but Ember slammed her to the mat. Ember trapped her in the Tree of Woe and hit the double foot stomp, and then Ember climbed to the top. She came off, and finally, after Asuka cheated in Orlando to avoid the move, Ember finally hit the Eclipse. She made the cover, but Asuka kicks out. The crowd exploded twice, once for the move and once for the kick out. Ember at this point was on the verge of tears. And then Asuka had to cheat some more. Ember went up top for a second one, but Asuka held the ref in front of her. Ember still dove off top with a cross body block, but Asuka rolled through that, grabbed a handful of trunks. The referee counted 1. The referee counted 2. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, the referee caught Asuka with a handful of trunks, broke it up, so it was only a 2 count. Ember took Asuka's head off with a super kick, but Asuka kicked out. And Asuka rolled through with a submission hold and then locked her in the Asuka lock. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, Asuka is still the NXT Women's Champion. She will live to see day 506 tomorrow night, as despite Morrow calling it 504 days, and I know I made that mistake on Wednesday, and I think Morrow must be reading my stats somewhere, but today is actually day 505. Tomorrow is day 506. 72 weeks and 2 days and counting. Asuka is still your champion, still undefeated, and where does she go from here? Kevin Owens and Samoa Joe are both sitting ringside for the main event. The glorious NXT Heavyweight Champion of the World, Bobby Roode, defending against former TNA World Champion Drew McIntyre, former Intercontinental Champion, former WWE Tag Team Champion, all those fun things. And now, can he add the NXT title to that? McIntyre had the New York Police Department pipe and drum band accompanying him to the ring. Roode continued his quest to have the longest entrance in pro wrestling, as his walk to the ring tonight clocked in at an even 4 minutes. Not the record, because I think back in San Antonio he almost hit 5 minutes. But, 4 minutes is still pretty good. The two men were evenly matched early, but Roode almost hit the glorious DDT 2 minutes into the match and mockingly told Drew just how close he was. McIntyre came back and used his suplex throw. Outside the ring, Roode went for a dive off the apron, but he got caught, and eventually Drew gave him a tilt-a-whirl slam onto the ring apron, which, by the way, is the hardest part of the ring. Roode finally took over with a neck breaker on the middle rope as McIntyre tried to get back in the ring. Roode hit a buff blockbuster on the mats outside, hit a neck breaker inside. At some point here, Roode got a pretty noticeable bruise outside his left leg, which did not play into anything, but still stood out like a sore thumb. Roode went for a running crossbody, but he got caught, and Drew dropped him with a Celtic cross for a near fall. Drew went for a top rope superplex, but Roode tripped him, and due to his height, by the way, McIntyre, all 6'5", 6'6" of him, the back of his head smacked right off the mat with a thud, but he was able to shake off whatever happened there, as while Roode played to the crowd, Drew did a sit-up and heaved Roode across the ring. McIntyre set up for the Claymore, but as Roode does in almost every match he's had as champion, he themed being unconscious. McIntyre picked Roode up and almost hit Future Shock, but Roode turned it into a backstabber. Drew finally hit the Future Shock, which, if you recall, was his old finisher, but Roode kicked out, hit a running Liger bomb. McIntyre finally hit the Claymore, but Roode got his foot on the ropes on the pinfall attempt. Roode then rolled outside, and Drew tried to go after him, but the referee manhandled McIntyre for some reason to prevent him from doing so. Drew then ignored him and did a running tope over the top rope, which he partly landed on Roode, but mostly just landed on the pretty black mats. Roode avoided a second Claymore and hit a spinebuster and a glorious DDT, but somehow, someway, McIntyre kicked out. Rude then hit a second glorious DDT, but instead of going for the pin, he went for a third glorious DDT, and that was his downfall as McIntyre got out of that, hit a second Claymore kick, and yes, ladies and gentlemen, Drew McIntyre is your new NXT champion. A great finish to an excellent main event. The title lineage now reads Seth Rollins, Big E, Bo Dallas, Neville, Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, Finn Balor, Samoa Joe, Shinsuke Nakamura, Bobby Roode, and Drew McIntyre. The king is dead. Long live the new king. After the credits rolled, and this is becoming an NXT TakeOver tradition here, after the credits roll, all of a sudden, everybody in the crowd suddenly looks to the right. So you knew something was happening. Somebody was coming. And as everyone is looking elsewhere, Bobby Fish and Kyle O'Reilly appear again. And they jump up on the ring apron to distract the new champion. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, Adam Cole, using that name, ran in through the crowd and attacked our new champion. The three former Ring of Honor stars put the boots to Drew McIntyre, and they stood tall over the new champ and over all of NXT as the show comes to an end. And so that does it from NXT TakeOver Brooklyn 3. So I don't know what to expect next, but these three former ROH stars appear to be running rampant on the company. But until Wednesday, we're back with a new episode of NXT on the road to TakeOver Houston. I want to thank you all for listening, and I'll talk to you again in 5 days.
You're listening to the Angry Marks Podcast Network.